Warning.
Well, I feel it's about time I made a separate video on the puppets. I'll be discussing why they exist to begin with, what I think of each design, and the future of the puppets on Logan's channel. I'm sure you guys already know at least bits and pieces of this, but having all of this in one video seems better anyways. So, let's begin. Back during the human potion, Logan showed the puppets for the very first time in a video. However, Logan later admitted in vlogs that the puppets had been planned out months before. Logan had said this was because he had known about Kappa and all of that stuff that was going to happen to YouTube. First of all, as I'm sure we all know now, I knew it before, but that's besides the point, Kappa had little effect on YouTube, especially if the channel still upload frequently, and the whole thing, unlike many of YouTube's changes, is more or less optional. If your videos are borderline, just mark them as not for kids and be done with it. Let's face it, Kappa was a very convenient excuse for Logan to use. I think for a while that Logan thought that Kappa was a big deal. While I think that was rather dumb and unrealistic, since everyone else seemed to be thinking that way, I guess I can't blame him. However, I believe he had these made for a couple reasons. For starters, he thinks, rather foolishly, that if he uses puppets, he can get away with more edgy content. Why whether they're plushes or puppets makes a difference in this regard? I don't know. But I realize that a lot of the puppet videos have more risky content than the plush counterparts. Next, he's using the puppets for merch. Say what you want about Logan and his sometimes lacking decision-making skills. Even he knows well that he won't be able to sell merch with Nintendo characters on it without Nintendo pouncing on Logan. More on Nintendo in a bit, by the way. Personally, I feel that if these interesting designs are kept to the merchandise, I wouldn't care. But they're not. Speaking of which, let's get to the designs. So I guess let's start with each individual character first. Junior certainly feels like the most time went into him. That doesn't say much, but you can almost tell that it was inspired by the plush. It's an okay design, but not great. It's the best one here, but as I've mentioned before, that's not saying much here. Joseph is probably a tier below Junior. The design isn't good, especially since not much was really taken from the original design besides, green, and the hat could be a shell? Yeah, that's a stretch though. Also, Joseph has by far the creepiest design. Just look at him. Is it just me here? It's mainly the fact that his teeth are permanently showing, and the whole thing gives off a creepy vibe. The only thing worse is when he, starts talking. Also, he doesn't have any eyebrows, which really adds to the creepiness. Let's move on to the next character. Mario is debatably better or worse than Joseph. On the one hand, he isn't nearly as creepy, but on the other hand, the design is about as inspired as a gray wall. Mario reeks of generic, moderately stressed father. Say what you want about the other designs we'll get to, but Mario's is just generic. And in comparison with Joseph's feels like there was some almost kinda not really inspiration in there. Yeah, Joseph is mostly just generic black kid, but Mario's generic stressed father. At least Mario doesn't look overly creepy. Oh god, what did they do to Bowser? Okay. So, Bowser. You do realize he's been called Trevor from GTA for a reason, right? I get it, Bowser sometimes gets aggressive or whatever, but him having scars just doesn't seem right. Also, I understand Bowser mainly spends his time sitting around watching Charlie, but something about this design doesn't seem right. At least the horns are there, but the way he's dressed and looks in general just doesn't fit Bowser's personality quite right. To be fair, it's really hard to describe in words, but Bowser's never looked right. Also, he has a similar problem to Joseph when it comes to the teeth and whatever, but it's not nearly as bad here. Alright, and finally we have Cody! Oh god! No! Cody! Oh no! What did they do to poor Cody? I've mentioned it before, but they turned the nerd meter up to an 11, when realistically they should have stopped around maybe a 5. Cody's almost always the hardest to look at, but that's also in part because whenever it's a puppet video, Cody usually shows up quite a bit. Ugh, poor Cody. Even in the introduction video of these puppets, Junior and Joseph point out how awful Cody looks.
You nerd! Oh my god, it's so funny! It's horrible!
Now, as for more general issues with the designs, well, let's start by comparing them to much better designs. Many of the puppets you would see in the videos were by Melissa and Doug. These puppets were much better designed. For starters, the puppets had much more malleable faces, allowing for different expressions. Chef PP and Brooklyn Guy aren't beholden to just one expression. Chef PP, when he's mad, can scrunch up his face. The new puppets can't seem to really do that. The older puppets also have long arms with the ability to move them around. The new human puppets have such small arms that seem to be rather stiff that they can't be manipulated. This causes the arms to basically just be dragged along with the character. The older puppets, however, have the ability to actually, well, point or wave at things. Heck, even the plush character's hands would sometimes be moved around. It wasn't always great, but there was an attempt there. Also, getting back to the expressions, some of the characters have designs on their faces. As in, Cody's eyebrows and eyes are always raised in constant surprise. Joseph literally has no eyebrows, and his only expression is,
"I'm going to eat your soul."
Bowser constantly looks angry, and Mario especially got this bad since he looks constantly stressed. He could be super happy in a scene, but he'll look stressed. Or what if he's trying to be angry? Instead, he'll just look stressed and mildly annoyed, not angry. Now, I get it, the plushes had one expression too, but for starters, the plushes had much more neutral looking expressions. I mean, heck, Cody's eyes were behind his glasses, so you couldn't usually tell what expression he was making, leaving that to the imagination. And that's where a giant, glaring issue comes in. With the plushes, you weren't able to always get all the information, so your brain had to fill in that which didn't get filled in by the plushes moving. But with the puppets, it fills in more than enough information to lose that fill-in-the-blank style. The puppets are permanently locked into one facial expression, and their mouths aren't malleable enough to be manipulated to even make attempts at different expressions. They can't really frown or grimace or be upset, they're just locked into whatever expression they were designed with. Now then, as for why they were designed this way, I have no idea. I get it, 2D designs on paper will almost always look better than its 3D counterpart. I like Sonic's 2D designs better than his 3D ones, and I think I always will. Whether it's because adding another dimension leaves less creativity or less to the imagination, I have no idea. But with that all being said, and I can't stress this enough, there are much better designs out there for these characters. How would they have translated over to 3D puppet designs? I don't know. But even if we didn't get perfect designs, these puppets could have been vastly improved. So, how was the reception to these puppets? Well, yeah, most people hated them. Of course, some people thought they should stay, but be redesigned. And some thought to just keep them whether they're redesigned or not, simply because at the time, people were still thinking that the big bad Kappa was going to destroy YouTube. But after most people realized that wasn't happening, most people who hadn't already turned on the puppets. And frankly, even Logan has admitted that he doesn't like the puppets anymore. And most people in general will, if you say you like the puppets and you're above the age of 5 or 10, look at you like you're insane. That's not to say that you aren't allowed to like the puppets, but you'll be looked at like that one guy who thinks the Virtual Boy wasn't one of Nintendo's greatest consoles. The consensus is more or less objective at this point that these puppets are terrible. Like I said, even Logan doesn't like them. That or the people who are saying they like them are just doing it to be contrarian or something, because I really don't know why they would do that. But just in case you're watching this video and for some reason love the puppet designs and think they're far superior to the plushes, I'm not going to call you stupid for doing so. You're entitled to your opinion, even if most people disagree. And so that was the end of the puppets. Wait, except not really. But before we get to that, let's discuss the Nintendo angle here. To the surprise of probably no one, Nintendo doesn't care about Logan's content. And trust me, Nintendo knows about the content. It's hard to miss when Logan has several million subscribers. Maybe when he had less than 1 million subscribers, he would have been able to fly under the radar, but now he's definitely been noticed. In fact, people who aren't particularly fond of Logan's content have tried getting Nintendo to shut down his channel before by emailing Nintendo about it. Trust me, they're well aware of Logan's existence. The reason they don't care is because, well, they're plush videos. Sure, he happens to be making money, quite a bit in fact, off of said videos, but Nintendo doesn't care about that. Logan isn't pretending to be Nintendo or anything. They don't care what Logan does with his plushes or what he posts on YouTube, appropriate or otherwise. Plus, how would it look on Nintendo's end going after some guy who plays with Nintendo plushes on the internet? Then again, I guess they've gone after less before. I think the big problem is that it would set a precedent of you're not allowed to film our plushes and then post it on the internet, which would be nearly impossible for Nintendo to enforce. So the point here is that Nintendo knows about Logan, so long as he keeps to his lane, as it were, by not trying to make merchandise of the characters, they don't seem to care. And remember, this is Nintendo. If Nintendo finds something they don't like, they're not going to twiddle their thumbs and wait around. No, they try to take their cut or just flat out shut the whole thing down immediately. So, why are the puppets still around? Why didn't the puppets stay stuck as an awful memory of 2019? Well, according to Logan, he has a contract which forces him to make one puppet video a month. But why? My only guess is that he signed this contract before he even knew whether or not the puppets would be received well or not. Or he thought that Kappa would force him to use the puppets because the plushes were Nintendo and so on. But like I said, I still think Kappa was just a really convenient excuse for him, though I could be wrong. As for the details of the contract though, well, aside from having to use the puppets at least once a month, we don't know what else is in it. But I can do the next best thing. I can hypothesize. What do I think is in the contract? Well, I'm pretty sure Logan got the puppets at a discount, potentially a heavy discount, with the catch being he has to use the puppets a certain amount of times, and or once every so often, in this case once a month. This makes sense except for one problem. Who is this really benefiting? From just this description, the problem remains that the actual creators aren't really getting a sort of shout out or what have you from any of this. They don't gain any publicity from it, and even if they did, I'm pretty sure these horrid things wouldn't be something you'd want as some of your finest work. No, there's one piece I think we're missing: the merchandise sales. The sales from puppets are probably split up somehow so that the designers get some money from the whole thing. Whether it's a 50-50 split, 40-60, etc. between Logan and the designers respectively, this all makes a bit too much sense. Frankly, Logan is probably making these videos as well to try and finally get rid of the remaining stock of puppets. Even if only a certain amount were made, well, they still have to be sold or gotten rid of somehow. And just how many have been sold anyways? Well, I found something out. With each puppet comes a tag with a QR code. The QR code leads to an unlisted video with each puppet thanking you for purchasing them. The quality, well, let's just say it varies. However, we can take the view counts and get a rough estimate of how many people have bought the puppets. Now, this is only a rough estimate, since some people might not have even bought the puppets and yet been able to find these videos, like me. But let's take the Cody puppet, oh god, for example. The video has what we'll call roughly 1,600 views after accounting for a margin of error. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? But that means that there are potentially 1,600 Cody puppets out there in the wild, all of which had to be bought. Cody's on-sale bundle price is roughly $36 or $37, but let's be even more generous and say that at one point Cody was on sale for as low as $30. Multiply that by 1,600 and you get $48,000. Even splitting that 50-50, each party still gets $24,000. And that's just the Cody puppet. So Logan isn't going to just scrap the rest of the puppets, which in my opinion is fair. Now the question is, how long will Logan have to keep up his end of the contract? Until all the puppets are sold? Until his debt, as it were, is paid off? Or something different? Well, I honestly don't know. But that's why the puppets are still somehow kicking around as of now. Now for my conclusion. This will be the part where I actually discuss how the puppets aren't really that bad and we should be more optimistic, right? No, that's wishful thinking. Let's face it, these puppets are awful. They were awfully designed, and I get the feeling more and more that Logan just wants to get rid of them. The only way to do that, however, is for him to sell them, which will hopefully end his portion of the contract. It sucks that we're stuck with these puppets for a while, but better once a month than all the time, I suppose. Yet another consequence of Logan's poor decision making, though. If you don't like looking at the puppets, I don't blame you. Just listen to the audio for the videos that the puppets are in, and try not to think of how much wasted potential there is just by the puppets being there. Also, try not to look at Joseph too much especially. It will try to eat your soul. Hopefully this puppet nonsense will end soon, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Well, thank you all for watching, and take care. Also, I'm pretty sure there's at least one person out there who's thought this entire time we've been complaining about every puppet that's been in an SML video ever, and has been very confused about it.
I admit, I kinda got a little angry.
Did you kill him?
What kind of fucking animal do you take me for? No, I didn't kill him.
Oh, fuck.
But I did kidnap his wife! Oh no!